On this episode of the CyberWatch podcast, the new year starts with threats new and old, malware is evolving faster than ever, and new details on an attack with international implications. All this and more today in CyberWatch. Hello, and welcome to the CyberWatch podcast for the week of January 5th, 2025. This is your weekly roundup of the top cybersecurity news and analysis curated by the analysts at Access Point Consulting. I'm your host, Curtis Franklin. Let's get to the news. We begin with several stories that show just how much the threat actors didn't take time off for the holidays. A series of new exploits and vulnerabilities are helping the bad guys get a running start into the new year. The year kicks off with the news that NFS, the most common way of accessing files across a network, can be readily attacked by threat actors to gain access to remote files. The root cause, as with so many internet services, is that security wasn't built into the protocol from the beginning. Researchers have used any of a growing number of tools that analyze NFS and its configuration to discover where readily exploitable vulnerabilities lie, and have found that there are frequently numerous vulnerabilities visible in a given NFS instance. As with many internet protocol services, configuration makes a huge difference in security, and researchers find that many issues lie with configuration problems like insufficient access control, improper export configurations, and a lack of authentication. Analysts point to restricting client access, using NSF v4 with strong authentication, like Kerberos, and implementing proper export configurations as examples of configuration details that make NFS far more secure. In a proof that the smallest change can make a huge difference in cybersecurity, a technique called double click jacking has been shown to offer an exploit that a single click doesn't provide. Researchers say that a newly described timing-based vulnerability class leverages a double-click sequence to facilitate clickjacking attacks and account takeovers in almost all major websites. Clickjacking, also called UI redressing, is an attack technique where users are tricked into clicking on a seemingly innocent web page element, like a button, leading to the deployment of malware or exfiltration of sensitive data. Double clickjacking is a variation on this technique that exploits the timing gap between the start of one click and the end of the second click to bypass security controls and take over accounts with minimal interaction. It's a sophisticated attack that relies on the fact that most defenders have assumed that a single click is the threat. A properly timed double click bypasses many of the defense mechanisms put in place on websites and in web client. Analysts say that web page owners should employ client-side protections, including JavaScript, to disable sensitive buttons until explicit user gestures like mouse movements or key presses are detected, and to manage the timing of user interactions to prevent unauthorized actions. Ultimately, though, new or modified standards will be required to eliminate the vulnerability. North Korean threat actors have deployed a new JavaScript malware named OtterCookie in a campaign that includes social engineering techniques, often with the hacker team posing as recruiters to trick job seekers into downloading malware during an interview process. This leads to sharing malware-laced files via GitHub or the official package registry, paving the way for propagation of malware like Beavertail and Invisible Ferret. According to researchers, the JavaScript malware that launches Beavertail is also designed to fetch and execute OtterCookie. Each of these is intended to execute shell commands that facilitate data theft, including theft of files, clipboard items, and cryptocurrency wallet keys. Analysts say that defense against malware like OtterCookie includes training employees to recognize phishing attacks, keeping software updated with the latest security patches, enforcing strong password policies and multi-factor authentication, and using firewalls and intrusion detection systems to secure networks. Shifting the focus from North Korea to Russia, Charming Kitten, also known as APT-35 or Sandstorm, has released new malware called Bella Ciao. This new malware uses a number of sophisticated techniques to hide from anti-malware systems. These techniques include obfuscation, polymorphism, encryption, and in-memory execution. And the developers have planned to take advantage of Bella Ciao's capabilities for some time. The malware has a modular design so that it's easily updated and modified, and so that it can take advantage of zero-day vulnerabilities that are yet to surface. While these may not sound like extraordinary capabilities, Bella Ciao's advanced evasion techniques, modular design, and ability to exploit zero-day vulnerabilities make it a formidable tool in the arsenal of state-sponsored threat groups like Charming Kitten. And its adaptability has already been shown through a new variant called Bella CPP, a variant written in C++. The new variant C++ Foundation makes it more efficient and harder to detect than its predecessor. Analysts point to a vigorous update in patching regimen, advanced threat detection tools, and network segmentation as ingredients in a defense strategy that can help keep Bella Ciao and its progeny at bay. Bella Ciao is certainly not the only malware that involves in horrible ways. Playful Ghost malware builds upon the legacy of Ghost Rat, a remote access tool whose source code was leaked way back in 2008. This multi-featured malware not only supports keylogging, screen capture, audio capture, and file execution, but also features functionalities aimed at anti-forensics, remote control, and privilege escalation. Based on a phishing campaign for distribution, the original attached file, which may be a legitimate piece of software, will load a malicious DLL, which then injects Playful Ghost into the victim system's memory. Playful Ghost is often deployed alongside additional tools like BoostWave, an in-memory dropper, and ChromeUserInfo.dll, which extracts stored credentials from Google Chrome. Analysts say that teaching users to recognize fake websites, regular software updates, and anti-malware software should be employed to defend against Playful Ghost and its scary relatives. Now, we can turn to several stories about organizations starting the year as malware and criminal victims. In an incident that began in 2024, the Richmond University Medical Center in New York has been investigating a ransomware attack since May of 2023. And it recently determined that the incident resulted in a data breach affecting more than 670,000 individuals. The Staten Island healthcare facility saw significant disruptions to service in May of 2023, but in a bit of good news, it says that no electronic health records were stolen. Unfortunately, other files may have been accessed or exfiltrated from Richmond University's Medical Center's network, and it originally took several weeks for IT services to return to normal after the attack. In early December 2024, forensic analysis determined that at least one of the exposed files contained patients' personal information, including name and one or more of information like social security numbers, driver's license or state ID numbers, date of birth, financial account information, payment card information, biometric information, user credentials, some medical information, and health insurance policy information. So far, no known criminal group has taken credit or responsibility for the attack. Moving from healthcare to email, over 3 million POP3 and IMAP mail servers without TLS encryption were reported to be exposed on the internet and vulnerable to network sniffing attacks. Scans from the Shadow Server security threat monitoring platform showed around 3.3 million hosts running POP3 or IMAP services without TLS encryption enabled, and this would expose usernames and passwords in plain text when transmitted over the internet. TLS has been around for years, but about 6 years ago, the protocol saw a significant update. Companies moving to protect themselves by enabling TLS should make sure that they are deploying TLS 1.3. Now, in an update to the original story, The Shadow Server Foundation has acknowledged that there could be false positives in its vulnerable server report. It has suspended issuing reports on the vulnerabilities until the false positive issues are resolved, but this is still a wake-up call for many companies. Make sure your email server is using TLS encryption unless you want all your usernames and passwords to be visible to any low-level hacker with a sniffer. In a continuing story, new details have emerged about a phishing campaign targeting Chrome browser extension developers that led to the compromise of at least 35 extensions to inject data stealing code, including those extensions from cybersecurity firm Cyberhaven. While initial reports focused on Cyberhaven's security-focused extension, subsequent investigations revealed that the same code had been injected into at least 35 extensions collectively used by roughly 2.6 million people. While the latest campaign started around December 5th, 2024, earlier command and control subdomains existed as far back as March of last year. The campaign used a phishing email sent to developers, which claimed that the developer's extension was in violation of Google policies. The email directed the recipient to a legitimate Google login page on which the criminal had placed illicit code. Analysis of compromised machines showed that the attackers were after the Facebook accounts of users of the poisoned extensions. Specifically, the data stealing code attempted to grab the user's Facebook ID, access token, account information, ad account information, and business accounts. According to researchers, 60% of corporate users have browser extensions installed on their computers, and over 40% of those users have extensions with high or critical risk permissions. Analysts say that regularly updating all browser extensions and software ensures that they have the latest security patches, and regularly reviewing and auditing installed extensions can detect and remove any that are malicious. A Russian threat actor known as Cloud Atlas has been using new VB Cloud malware to facilitate data theft against dozens of users, most of whom are in Russia. Cloud Atlas distributed phishing emails with a Microsoft Office document that downloads a malicious RTF template, which then leverages an equation editor vulnerability to execute an HTML application file, which establishes launcher and cleaner files for the VB Shower backdoor. VB Shower allowed the deployment of PowerShower, which acts as a downloader for up to 7 PowerShell payloads, and VB Cloud, which allows gathering of disk information, system metadata, documents of various formats, and Telegram-related files. Analysts say that updates, mitigation techniques, awareness raising, and defensive measures and processes should all be installed and implemented continuously by businesses and individual users. Finally, a couple of new details about a story you've almost certainly heard about already. On December 8th, 2024, the Treasury Department was notified by a third-party software service provider, BeyondTrust, that a threat actor had gained access to a key used by the vendor to secure a cloud-based service used to remotely provide technical support for Treasury Department offices' end users. With access to the stolen key, the threat actor was able to override the service's security, remotely access certain Treasury user workstations, and access certain unclassified documents maintained by those users. The Treasury Department further said that it has taken the BeyondTrust server offline. Now, BeyondTrust said that its investigation into the incident found that the attackers gained access to a remote support SaaS API key that allowed them to reset passwords for local application accounts. Now, BeyondTrust has yet to reveal how that key was obtained. Additional details released since the first of the year show that the threat actors targeted the Treasury Department and breached the Office of Foreign Assets Control, as well as the Office of the Treasury Secretary. While the Chinese government has denied any involvement in the attack, almost all observers note that the information access was focused on possible sanctions of and responses to Chinese economic activity. Stay tuned for more on what is almost certain to be a developing story. Well, that's it for this week. Please join us again next time for the CyberWatch podcast, and be sure to look for our new Expert Series podcast, where we bring you conversations with cybersecurity experts to help you succeed in your cybersecurity career. This podcast has been brought to you by Access Point Consulting. Follow along with the CyberWatch podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And as always, you can learn more about Access Point Consulting at www.accesspointconsulting.com. I'm Curtis Franklin. We'll see you next week.